It's time for another reality check. And counting down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Is everybody ready? Put on your tinfoil hats, press the like and subscribe buttons, tune in, and let's go! What's going on, guys? Reality check, truth unveiled, coming at you with another one. I'm finally getting my studio together, guys. I'm trying to figure this thing out. We've been at this for some years now, and I really haven't tried to up my game, and I think it's time to do that. Hopefully you guys will like what I'm doing with the videos and getting things on. Anyway, today we're going to cover the Karmelo Anthony case, because I think this is a big case, and I think it is a big case, okay? There's no I think to it. This is a big freaking case, man, and it needs to be covered. I know a lot of people are covering it. I mean, it's being covered everywhere, so to say that it needs to be covered, that's, it's already being covered. It's freaking being covered by so many people, but, you're going to get reality checks, point of view or perspective in on this thing. So let's listen to this Fox News clip real quick. Let's get this started, and let's go from here and see what Fox has to say. How about it? What do you say, guys? Let's get it going. All right, here we go. Listen to this. All these protesters out here protesting. It's so absurd. I mean, this man, this dude murdered that boy, and you've got these protesters out here protesting on behalf of the freaking murderer. You gotta love this crap.
Your beliefs are built on a lie. It's okay. First degree premeditated murder. Capital punishment.
It is first degree premeditated murder. It is. That's exactly what it is. So anyone who says otherwise is either a flat out liar, or they're lunatics. They're absolutely lunatics, or you might say they're demon possessed. And I mean, remember what Jesus said: a kingdom divided against itself can't stand. And so we know that the satanic kingdom has to stand up for their own, and so we can pretty much put that in there. The idea that these people would stand up and protest on behalf of Karmelo Anthony, who murdered Austin Metcalf in cold blood, just gives you it tells you with a clarity. Because I mean, what part of "thou shalt not murder"? I know people like to say "thou shalt not kill," but the scripture really says "thou shalt not murder." What part of "thou shalt not murder" is not understood? Hello. So anyway. The point being that he murdered in cold blood. It was a murder, cold-blooded murder, man. And these people that are standing out here protesting are demonic. That's all there is to it. It's just straight up demonic. Let's keep watching. Justice for what?
This is about race. Because if
she said it right there. This is about race, and we want justice. Justice for what? We want justice for Austin Metcalf. How about that? How about give us some freaking justice for Austin Metcalf? Huh? How about real justice for the one who was murdered, and for the family who now has to live the rest of their lives without their loved one? The parents who have to live the rest of their lives without their son. She's saying this is This isn't about, she said this is about race, and she's making it clear that that's exactly what this is about. This is about race. It is about race because these people are absolutely racist.
If she was on the other foot, they wouldn't give a damn.
Wow, those were the...
See how backwards that is? If the shoe was on the other foot, they wouldn't give it. Come on, man. No, the reality is it would. Okay, that's the problem. The problem is that, yeah, but she's the same way. These people are such hypocrites because if the shoe was on the other foot, they would be screaming for. If Austin Metcalf had stabbed Karmelo Anthony in the chest with a knife, they would be screaming for Austin Metcalf's execution. Period. If the shoe was on the other foot, they would be screaming for the execution for that white boy. Now, I'm going to make clear, I'm not saying this or making these I'm not making these statements off of anything, any racial, anything racial. Because I said, no, look, if anybody remembers the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin situation, if you remember that situation, I actually lost friends because of that situation. Because I wanted to see justice. I thought there should have been justice for Trayvon Martin. And I know that may sound, I know there's people to this day that might still argue that. But I'm sorry, but Zimmerman was not innocent in that case, and I stand on that. I said it back then, and I'll say it again. George Zimmerman should have been charged for the murder of Trayvon Martin. Okay? So, that's a fact. Because, look, let's look at the Trayvon Martin Zimmerman case, and let's go over a refresher of that real quick. Okay? Do you guys remember that case? Trayvon Martin was walking through a gated neighborhood. He was a black kid with a hoodie on, a black man with a hoodie on, walking through a gated neighborhood. Granted, maybe he shouldn't have been in that neighborhood. Okay, we might be able to argue that. However, he wasn't bothering anyone, and he was only passing through. It wasn't like he was out there breaking into houses or robbing anyone. Dude, he was just passing through. George Zimmerman, the self-proclaimed neighborhood watch police, decided to call the cops, which would have been the right thing to do. He calls the police, said, "Hey, this is a little suspicious. This dude doesn't live here. He's walking through the neighborhood, yada, yada, yada." Police tell him, do not confront. The police told him, do not confront. He did not regard what the police dispatch told him. He confronted Trayvon Martin and began to harass Trayvon Martin. Then after a long while of harassment, Trayvon began to fear for his safety, and in self-defense, Trayvon began to attack George Zimmerman, in return, Zimmerman decides to shoot the man in cold blood. Now, Zimmerman got off on that case because they said it was a self-defense situation. Okay? I argue that is not self-defense. My argument is this. If you confront
chaotic scenes
someone,
outside of a Texas courthouse this week during
if you
the murder
confront
trial of
someone,
Karmelo and...
if you walk up to a person and you confront that person, okay, and you begin to cause problems, arguing, threats, whatever it might be, and you're harassing that other person for whatever reason it might be, and that person begins to fear for themselves and their own safety, and they attack you in self-defense of themselves, in defense of themselves, how you going to pull out a gun and shoot the person and then claim that you were defending yourself against them? They didn't confront you. You went after them. George Zimmerman went after Trayvon Martin. Zimmerman could have kept back and waited for the cops to show up. But no, he took it upon himself and he went after Trayvon Martin and he shot that young black boy, that young black man. And that shouldn't have happened. Okay, Zimmerman should have been charged for murder. So I felt that the courts were unjust there. Trayvon Martin's family did not get the justice that family deserved. Okay? And why am I talking about Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman? That was so many years ago. Because this is a similar situation, but it's on the opposite end of the spectrum. Right? This was a black kid, a black dude who murdered a white boy. Okay? So I've got to say again, number one, in this case, with Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf, first of all, Karmelo Anthony had no business over in the tent where the white boys were at. He should have never been over there. However, let's say that he walks over there and he had no ill intent, right? Let's just play along and say that he didn't have any ill intent. Okay? Now, he goes into their encampment and they ask him to leave. And he refuses to leave. Okay, now, right off the jump, who is the aggressor here? He is in an area that he has no business being at, just like Trayvon Martin was in an area he had no business being at. Right? However, the difference between Trayvon Martin and Karmelo Anthony is that Austin Metcalf did not confront, or he didn't chase Karmelo Anthony down like the way that George Zimmerman chased down Trayvon Martin. No, Karmelo Anthony went to where Austin Metcalf was and started trouble. When he was asked to, and you say, well, how did he start trouble? Maybe he just wanted to sit down. Well, when he was asked to leave, he should have left. He should have peacefully left and respected them on that. He didn't have any business over there. It wasn't his area. Okay? So he should have left. But instead of leaving, he decided to cause a scene. They asked him multiple times to leave. He refused to leave. Austin Metcalf then apparently pushed or put his hands on or whatever onto Karmelo Anthony, which maybe he shouldn't have done that. However,
hello everyone.
This
is the second hour of a big weekend show.
However, in all fairness, he did ask them to leave, and pushing someone is not a reason to stab that person. Okay, man, I've been in my share of fights over my lifetime, which thank God I haven't been in a fight in years. But growing up as a young teen and a young man, I was in many fights. I've been pushed. I've been jumped by multiple people on the streets. Okay, and I'll tell you that there is not a single situation where I had to pull out a knife and stab anyone. There was no situation. I took either I stomped them or I took the butt whipping. It is what it is, right? I either whooped them or they whooped me, but there was no reason to stab it and murder anyone. Okay? This wasn't even a fight. This wasn't even a fight. Austin Metcalf did not punch Karmelo Anthony. At least there's nothing that we see thus far in the case that indicates otherwise. Okay? So it wasn't like Austin Anthony and his buddies ran up on Karmelo Anthony and started jumping him or started, or grabbed a hold of him, picked him up and slammed him on the ground and started kicking him. There was nothing, as far as we know, from any witnesses that we have, from all the information that we have currently to date, there is nothing like that took place. There was nothing like that took place, period. Period. So there was no excuse for Karmelo Anthony to stab and murder. There was no excuse. Austin Metcalf, let's say that Austin Metcalf pushed Karmelo Anthony. Again, that was another opportunity for Karmelo Anthony to turn around and just leave. And they want to argue, well, he was outnumbered. Again, if I walk into an area where I'm outnumbered and the guys that outnumber me tell me to leave or ask me to leave or demand that I leave, why would I be stupid enough to stand there when I know that I'm outnumbered? Unless I had a premeditated intent. And I believe, in my opinion, that Karmelo Anthony premeditated it all. I think that he knew he went over there with the intent to agitate these white boys so that they would come at him, so that he would have an excuse to stab one of them. I mean, what was he even doing on the school campus with a freaking knife in the first place? Hello? That shouldn't have even been. Come on. He should have never had a knife in the first place. But let's keep listening on. I've ranted on enough for the time being.
It is day 3 of the trial of Karmelo Anthony, and he's accused of first-degree murder for the deadly stabbing of fellow 17-year-old high school student Austin Metcalf. Now, the alleged murder...
It was first-degree murder.
Occurred at a
Texas high
school track meet back in 2025.
It was more than just accusations.
The defense team claims Anthony acted in self-defense.
There was no self-defense.
Rested its case just moments ago after calling 21 witnesses. We have team coverage with former NYPD Inspector and Attorney Paul Morrow standing by. But first, we go to Brooke Taylor live outside of that courthouse in McKinney, Texas. Hi, Brooke.
Hi, Tommy. Yeah, at the center of the prosecution's case right now are these students that were under the tent. They saw the stabbing and the moments leading up to it. More than 10 of these students and teammates
Can you imagine being these
testified
students?
in court yesterday.
Can you imagine being the students that had to see this, that had to watch this stabbing? Now, I'm sad to say I grew up in the hood. I grew up in the ghettos. Okay, so I've seen stabbings myself up close and personal, and I'm telling you, it's not cool. It's not something that you can, unless you are absolutely evil, it's nothing that you get off or enjoy seeing. It is a disgusting and disturbing sight that you really just can't get out of your head. Those are memories that are going to live with you and haunt you for the rest of your life. You're going to see that crap in your mind for the rest of your life. Now, you can shove it to the back of your mind, but you won't forget it.
And today. Now, many told jurors that they thought it was unusual that Karmelo Anthony, who went to a different school, was under their team's tent. The defense said that Anthony was sheltering from the rain and recognized someone there. Students testified that Austin Metcalf repeatedly asked Anthony to leave. Several recalled Anthony responding, "Touch me and find out."
And there's another indication. Touch me and find out. He already had it premeditated. He already knew what he was going to say the moment he went over there and they said something to him. He already knew. I believe I personally, in my opinion, I believe he premeditated the whole thing. Now, granted, had they not said anything to him and he just sat there, maybe he would not have had the excuse or initiative to actually use the knife that he carried into the school that he never should have had in the first freaking place. But that's not how it went down. They asked him to leave, and he did not leave. And when they tried to take action on it, he stabbed them and tries to call it self-defense. Bull shiz.
Now, jurors also heard that Metcalf made the first physical contact, but witnesses described it as minor. One called it a soft touch, another described it as a little push. They testified that moments later, Anthony pulled out a 5-inch folding knife from his backpack and stabbed Metcalf in the chest. The defense argues Anthony acted out of self-defense and fear. Now, one of the key witnesses today was a 17-year-old teammate of Metcalf's who was under the...
He acted out of self-defense and fear. Oh, my God. Look, man. Look here, bro. I went into the camp because I just wanted to get out the rain. And they all surrounded me. Even though I was in their area and I shouldn't have been there. But they surrounded me, so I feared for my life. Even though I invaded their space and they didn't chase me down, I went after them and I started it with them. And I refused to leave. So that when they touched me, I stabbed him and murdered his ass to death. Yeah, that's what happened, man. That's what happened. It was self-defense. I feared for my life. Bro, why were you there in the first place? If you were scared, dog, why didn't you leave, bro? Dude. You see how this stuff gets me flustered? Bro, if you were scared, why did you keep hanging around, my guy? If you were scared for your life, why you ain't turn around and leave? Come on, dude.
The tent. He testified that Metcalf tried to avoid a fight, telling Anthony, quote, "Dude, I'm not going to fight you at a track meet." Now, jurors also heard from an 18-year-old witness today. This is important testimony because he knew both Anthony and Metcalf, and he was the student who Anthony was apparently saying hi to. He testified when Austin asked him to leave, quote, "Karmelo said you'll have to move me." Austin put his hand on his back. I saw.
You see what I mean? This is why I'm convinced that this was premeditated. He said, "Oh, you'll have to move me." Bro, all you had to do was leave, dude. All you had to do was leave. They asked you to leave. You were outnumbered. Why would you stay there and say, "Oh, you're just going to have to move me, and if you touch me, see what happens"? You're asking for trouble. That's not self-defense. That's starting it. At this point, they are defending themselves against you. If anything. If anything. No, maybe you can't count that. I'm just saying, the point being that they asked you to leave, and you said, "Oh, well, you're going to have to move me." And then he also made the statement, "Touch me and see what happens." You see, that's not self-defense. Self-defense would have been him just walking by, minding his own business, and they see him walking by, and they all decide to surround him and start talking crap to him and trying to hassle him. Then maybe he could scream self-defense. But dude, when you confront another person and you start bothering the other person, and the other person then defends themselves against you, and you decide to stab or shoot or whatever it is and take that person's life, that's not self-defense, dog. You provoked this. You provoked it, man. You should have left. So all these people out here, all these folks out here screaming, "Oh, free Karmelo," you're racist. You're only saying that because it was a white boy that he killed. You wouldn't say that if it was another black kid that he killed, if it was another black dude. And I guarantee you, if the shoes were on the other foot, and it had been Austin Metcalf that had stabbed and murdered Karmelo Anthony, they would have been screaming for Austin Metcalf to be executed. They would have been screaming for justice for Karmelo Anthony if it had been the other way around.
Karmelo's hand go in the backpack. "We're at a track meet. I wouldn't expect anything to be in there," Karmelo said. "Touch me, you'll have to move me," and find out, trying to provoke him. Then what happens? The prosecutor asked.
What happened?
He said Austin puts his hand on him and falls back.
Yep.
How was Austin trying to move him? The prosecutor asked. He responded, it was him trying to move him off his seat, a soft shove. The prosecutor then said, what did Austin do? The witness replied, I see the hole in his chest and blood. He starts screaming for help. Now, the state's last witness was a medical examiner. The prosecution showed 4 pictures of Metcalf. His family stepped outside the courtroom so that they didn't have to see that. Meanwhile, if convicted of murder, Anthony faces up to life behind bars, Tommy.
And he should.
Brooke Taylor, thank you so much.
And he should get life behind bars. That was a cold-blooded murder. I can't stress it enough. He should have never been over there. Just like George Zimmerman should have never chased down Trayvon Martin, Karmelo Anthony should not have been over there where Austin Metcalf was even at. And even in going over there, when he was asked to leave, he should have left. See, your self-defense claim goes out the window the moment they ask you to leave and you refuse and you start telling them, oh, well, touch me and see what happens. Your self-defense claim is shot out the window, dude. Now, I'm not a lawyer, and we'll have to wait and see how the judge and jury, we'll have to see what their decision is. But to me, in my personal mind, that's gone out the window the moment you confront someone else in their area. The self-defense claim is gone. It's shot. And again, now, let me play devil's advocate here for a minute, because I want to say this. George Zimmerman should have been charged for the murder of Trayvon Martin, and he got off scot-free. So that is an argument that if the black community who are screaming for the freedom of release of Karmelo Anthony, if they were to use that argument, the fact that George Zimmerman got off scot-free when Trayvon Martin, who was a black dude, was murdered, then Karmelo Anthony should get off free too. If they were to use that argument, that would actually be a legitimate argument, in my opinion. I would have to say, okay, I could feel the sentiment on that. But they're not even arguing that. They're not talking about that. And they don't care nothing about it. What they care about is the fact that a black dude killed a white dude, and they're excited because they're racist themselves. I just, no, okay. Let me not false accuse anyone. Lord, forgive me. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. We are not to bear false witness, so I don't want to bear false witness. But it seems to me, by their actions and by their words, that they are that they're just racist. They seem like they're racist. They're happy that a black dude killed another white dude, and they want to see this black dude walk free so that he can murder some more. That's the way it sounds to me, because this is clearly murder. This is murder all the way, dude. This is murder all the way. That's it. Bottom line, it's straight up murder. Period. It was a cold-blooded murder.
Joining us now in studio to break down the latest developments in this trial is former NYPD inspector and attorney, our favorite, Paul Morrow. Paul, I could talk to you about this all day, but I'm very excited to get your take on this. They got 21 witnesses.
Talk to us, Paul.
You've got these witnesses. We just heard from Brooke Taylor saying that if Austin Metcalf touched him, it was a soft shove saying, hey, get out of our tent. Then you have, of course, the stabbing that led to the death of Austin Metcalf. How do you break this down? And second question, how does race play into this? Because the folks outside really want to make this about race. I'm not so sure that factors in legally, though.
No, legally, of course, race shouldn't.
Of course they want to make it out to be race, because they are racist. No sane person, no non-biased, moral person would make any of this out to be about race. You wouldn't see race. What you would see is one man murdering another. Doesn't matter who it is. It's still murder.
Factor into it, but let's be honest, it's going to be a factor if anybody is so inclined in the jury to listen to people that are trying to foment that attitude outside the courtroom, and if they can hear the noise. We've seen that so often here in Lower Manhattan, and to ignore it is naive. Let's review the facts as we know them, right? Not the testimony, the facts. Number one, Karmelo Anthony is in the opposing team's tent for no good reason. Number two, he's armed with a knife. All right, those are not in dispute. Those are facts. Then we get the testimony. He's there. He's asked to leave. He doesn't want to leave. He says, touch me, you'll find out. According to the testimony, then Austin Metcalf puts a hand on him, gently shoves him, and then he reacts, reaches in, pulls out this knife. Why he had a knife at a track meet is going to be a big issue, I'm sure, going forward as we get to the defense and then, of course, the closing arguments.
That should be a big issue. Why did you, unless you had a premeditated agenda, why would you have even had the knife at a track meet? Why would you go into a track tent of a team that you're not even part of? Right? Especially around a bunch of white boys whom you claim had you scared for your life. Why'd you even go over there in the first place unless you were looking for trouble? Bottom line, period.
The action in this is going to come down to two areas. Number one, under Texas law, you can't provoke an incident and then claim self-defense.
Exactly.
That's why I went into that recounting of the facts.
And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You can't provoke the incident and then claim self-defense. Isn't that what I'm saying? There we go. Coming from Paul Morrow. Thank you, Paul. That's what I keep saying. And that's exactly what I said back during the Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman case. You cannot provoke an incident and then call it self-defense. George Zimmerman provoked the incident with Trayvon Martin. And when Trayvon Martin, out of fear for his own life, began to whoop Zimmerman's arse, then Zimmerman decides to pull out a gun and shoot Trayvon dead. Okay? But Zimmerman provoked it from the beginning. You see? See how that works? You can't provoke an incident and then call it self-defense. That's not how it works. That's not how it's supposed to work. Now, I'm sad to say that that's how it worked in the Trayvon Martin and Zimmerman case. Zimmerman, his sorry murdering behind, actually did walk free. And he shouldn't have. He should not have walked free. He should have been charged.
He's in the tent. And then he won't leave, even after being asked numerous times. And he's from the opposing team, and supposedly they are strategizing how they're going to run the track meet, and so they want him out of the tent. And then the other thing is that your response, if you are threatened with force in Texas, is that your response has to be, quote-unquote, reasonable. Even under the opening argument that his attorney made, which articulates the idea that Metcalf and his brother had sort of surrounded Karmelo, that doesn't, to me, rise to the level of pulling a knife and sticking it in somebody's chest.
Yeah, he could have turned around and walked away. He could have run. If he was really scared for his life, number one, he shouldn't have been there in the first place. I can't say that enough. But even so, he's there now. They tell him to leave. They surround him. He's getting scared. He should have turned around and walked away, or run away if you have to. He should have got away from that situation as fast as he could, not stood there and continued to provoke it.
So I am hard-pressed here to see where they're going to go. They must have some really, really compelling witnesses on the defense side, because as of now, I don't see why they even went to trial.
Wow.
Paul, I find this case sad and
I can see why it went to trial. I'll tell you why it went to trial. Because it was a black boy that murdered a white kid. I believe, in my personal opinion, my opinion don't mean squat. I'm just a dude talking here on the internet. My opinion don't mean squat, but in my opinion, in my squatless, worthless opinion, it should have never it should have never been the trial. If it had been the other way around, in my opinion, and Austin Metcalf had murdered Karmelo Anthony, Austin, I don't think there would have been a trial. It would have been automatic. It would have been a no-brainer. He would have been charged for murder. Wouldn't have even needed a trial. They would have charged him. Period. They're only going through this long, drawn-out trial because of all the racial tension that is being stirred up surrounding this. Again, just my opinion. Take it as a grain of salt.
Also fascinating because I have, if you've ever been in the state of Texas, at least until recently, I know constitutional carry is a different thing, but to get your carry license, you have to take classes on what the self-defense laws are in the state of Texas. I think every state should do it, but I think it's really educational. And you learn the Castle Doctrine. You learn why Texas is viewed as a state that allows you to defend yourself in situations even other states don't.
Sure.
But
Exactly.
there are certain things that are consistent that you have to fear for your life, or and there's the opportunity or your property. So I want to take all subjectivity out of this and look at this and say, okay, if I want Karmelo Anthony to get off on this charge, if I want to put myself in his shoes and make myself believe that he was justified under this more loose stand your ground law in Texas.
Go ahead.
I don't know how you get there. How does the defense get there?
To me, it's going to be a pretty steep climb. I think what you likely will have to get from them is some sort of articulation that he was in genuine fear for his life.
Exactly.
And to me, in my opinion, that's going to be hard to get because he shouldn't have been there in the first place. And if he was in fear of his life, why didn't he just leave?
Because he had to reach for a knife, that's bad enough. But then he stabs Austin in the heart, right in the chest. I mean, any 5-year-old knows that's likely going to be fatal. Now, there is reporting from the police report that Karmelo's response was, he's not going to die. One of the cops says to him, if he dies, your life has changed significantly, kid. And he says, he's not going to die. He was actually kind of casual about it. I don't think he quite realized what he did. So maybe he's going to say, hey, look, I didn't mean to kill him. It's going to be some sort of intent issue here. But he also made other statements that I think are going to cut against him. Like, for instance, he didn't say he threatened my life. I was terrified. He said he put his hands on me.
Yeah.
Now here, okay. Here's one thought. Here's something to think about. Okay? Austin Metcalf made the statement to the officer, oh, he's not going to die. Indicating that he probably was not actually expecting Austin Metcalf to actually die. Karmelo Anthony was probably not expecting Austin Metcalf to die. Thus the reason why he made the statement to the officer, says, oh, he's not going to die. Right? Here's a thought and a question that I have. When you understand gang, and I don't want to throw out false accusations and accuse Karmelo Anthony of actually being part of a gang per se. This is not an accusation. I'm not accusing him. All I'm doing is throwing out a speculation. What if part of a gang initiation was for him to find a white person or somebody in general, who knows, but probably specifically a white person, and stab that white person as part of the initiation, right? And maybe he went through with it. Maybe could that be the reason why he walked over uninvited to that area where Austin Metcalf and the other guys were at, where he should not have been in the first place, with a knife, provoking them with words like, touch me and see what happens, etc., refusing to leave, stirring the situation up. Was he doing this as part of a gang initiation, and he needed a reason to stab someone, an excuse to stab someone that he thinks would keep that would allow him to do it, but still keep him out of trouble, keep himself out of trouble? Could that be the case? I mean, I'm not saying that it is. I'm only speculating here. It's only speculation. But when you understand gang initiations, sometimes part of a gang initiation might be to make your first kill. And what if the first kill was to kill a white boy? There's a lot of that being screamed out right now these days. Just saying. I'm not saying that this is the situation. Who knows? I don't even know if they've investigated any possible chances of gang activity on behalf of Karmelo Anthony. Who knows? But I mean, that's a thought that goes through my mind from the experience I have in the streets. I'm just saying.
All he said, that's not much of an articulation of fear.
Does that rate premeditation? If he says, touch me and you'll see what happens?
You know, in this, premeditation is much debated in law.
Yeah.
Like there are instances where people say it can be literally a second or two. But in this case, it really doesn't matter. The way Texas law is constructed, you have capital murder. That is, if you are going to be put on death row. And that has a specific set of circumstances that are not present here. Killing a witness, multiple victims, killing a cop. Same thing in New York. But furthermore, he was 17 at the time of the crime. Even if he did qualify for the death penalty under the Supreme Court decision, he doesn't get it. So the most he's looking at is 99 years.
Right. Yeah, because he was still underage. He was not of the age of majority when he committed the murder, which is another thing to take into consideration too, because you think he didn't know that before he went over there and stabbed, you think he didn't recognize, okay, look, I'm not even 18 years old yet, so if I kill somebody now, if I murder someone right now, my sentence or my punishment would be much less harsh, right? I mean, that, again, that can go right along with the possibility of this being a gang-related situation, where he needed to stab or kill, make his first killing as part of the gang initiation. I'm just saying, again, let me repeat myself. I'm not saying that this is what happened. I'm not even stating or accusing Karmelo Anthony of even being part of any gang. But I am speculating that this is a possibility that if not already investigated, it needs to be investigated.
Paul, I want to ask you about the jury selection process. There was a report last week that there were 3 black jurors who were removed by the prosecution, and the defense objected to that, claiming that it was racially motivated. However, the prosecution came back and said no, it was because they were teachers. And at least one of them was on record apparently saying that he would have had a very difficult time voting to convict because Karmelo looked like just a kid. Give us your read on that.
Yeah, so you knew in this case, as we've seen in so many cases, that there was going to be a lot of scrutiny on the jurors, right? And in this case, you're 100% right. They had 3 female black teachers who were the only African Americans apparently in the jury pool that made it to that point. The prosecution used their exemption right to eliminate those 3. The defense objected. The judge sided with the prosecution. But you're 100% right to focus on that. Why? Because that is almost certainly going to be an area of appeal. And, I've seen it speculated online. I don't know that they would be this cute by half because you're playing with a young man's life here. But I've seen speculation where people have said things like, did the defense game that out, knowing that they would like, because what the prosecution used to get rid of those 3 was not, well, they're black, you can't do that, you can't do it on the basis of race. They did it saying they're teachers.
Right. So there could be some partiality there. See, those are teachers, and since they're teachers, you could see partiality or also the fact that they have a public name within the school system. And so putting them out there within the public's viewing could be detrimental to them because of how they may make their judgment because of what their judgments might be. Now, I understand the judgments are generally anonymous or always anonymous, so you're not supposed to share how you judged in the court hearing or court case or whatever. It's supposed to be all anonymous, but still, the fact that they're on the jury could cause potential issues for them at their job. So I could see that. I could see that.
And this was a student, and for the reasons that you said, they'd have a hard time being objective.
Exactly.
That carried the day.
Yep.
So is it possible that they're actually playing for that appeal? I'd be very surprised. I think that, as I said, that's too cute by half. But nonetheless, that is going to be an issue. The jury selection in this thing, of course, was crucial. I don't know the rest of the composition of the jury, but I do know that there are no other African Americans.
Well, I keep going back to the why question in terms of why would somebody bring a knife to a track meet in broad daylight. It reminds me of a certain parallel to a certain extent. Alex Preddy up in Minneapolis, where why would you bring a gun to an ice staging area when you provoked ice in the past?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Why would you bring a gun to an ice agent unless you're intentionally looking to cause trouble? Unless you're trying to. And I'm a Second Amendment advocate. I'm for the Second Amendment, but when we carry our firearms, you bear that responsibility to be sure that you carry with wisdom. And if you're out. You've got a firearm and you're out there attacking law enforcement and harassing law enforcement while they're trying to do their job. Or, even if you have law enforcement just standing around not bothering anyone and you go up and you've got a firearm on you and you start getting in the face of law enforcement and harassing them, they begin to fear for their lives. Again, when you're provoking the situation, you can't claim that to be self-defense when you're the one provoking the situation.
And expect that something bad could not happen. So will that be coming into play as well in terms of why, not premeditated so much, but why have a knife on you in the first place where you're not going out at night somewhere in a dangerous...
It's premeditated. Why have a knife on you in the first place at a track meet? Premeditated. Why were you over there in the first place in the area that you shouldn't have been? I believe it was premeditated. I'm sticking with, I'm holding to my guns on this. Who knows? The jury might find a different outcome. But at this point, I'm sticking to my guns on this.
Area. You're in Frisco, Texas, which is a very affluent town, one of the fastest growing cities in the country. The why keeps coming back to me.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's going to go to the idea that, first of all, he was in violation of the school rules themselves. The school apparently has a very strict rule about bringing any weapons onto school grounds. So he did that at the opposing school, and then he brings that weapon into the tent. And I think that's going to go very strongly when the prosecutor buttons up his argument at closing that, look, he has this knife on him. He's not supposed to have it. He goes across to the opposing team's tent, sits himself down, and won't leave even after multiple witnesses have now said he was told to leave. So, as I was saying here to Joey, the idea here that they're going to somehow or other conjure some circumstances where the stabbing to the chest under those circumstances is going to be somehow considered reasonable really feels like a steep climb to me. They must really have something loaded up. But you know what? There's a larger why. And that's the part that I think that Joey was talking about the whole thing being sad, too. This kid, Karmelo, had never been in trouble. He was a good student. Apparently, he had, worked out, so, he was a winner. And, why take the knife? Why go look in because from where I sit, the whole...
Again, that's a valid point. They're claiming that he was a good student. He'd never been in trouble, yada, yada, yada. Then why take the knife? And again, I go back to my previous statements earlier that is it possible? Could it be that Karmelo Anthony, even as a good student, as he's claimed to have been, is it possible that he may have gotten involved with some gang activity and maybe performed this entire thing as part of a gang initiation? And since he was underage, and he waited for someone to actually touch him physically before pulling out the knife and stabbing the person, that he thought in his mind, I'm going to do it this specific way so that I would have a less penalty or less chances of getting in trouble and actually get away with it. And then I'll be free. And once I'm free, I have fulfilled my initiation with the gang, and now I'm part of the gang, right? And I stress again, this is not an accusation. I am not accusing. I'm only speculating the possibilities. I could be far off. I could be so wrong on this, guys. But I'm just saying.
Thing was pointless. It does feel like a provocation. It's the last thing this kid needed as he's ending his school years and going on.
So Karmelo's character matters here, then.
It feels that way.
Sure. Okay.
Maybe at least in sentencing. All right.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all.
Yeah. So anyway, we're gonna try to keep track. We're gonna keep watching this case and see what happens, guys. Like I said, man, in my opinion on this whole ordeal with Karmelo Anthony, this was clearly, to me, provoked. This was not self-defense. This was it seems to me like it was premeditated. He went to an area that he should not have ever been, and then when he was asked to leave, first of all, he went to the area where he shouldn't have been. He carried a knife with him. He had a knife on him that he shouldn't have even had with him at a track meet. And then when he was asked to leave, he refused and warns and threatens Metcalf, telling him, "Touch me and see what happens." So he went over there, seemingly to me, with the sole intent to provoke trouble, and just waiting for someone to make a move so that he would have an excuse to use the knife. That's all right. So that's all I have for you today, guys. On this video, like, subscribe, share this video, and we'll see you on the next one. Reality check, truth unveiled. I'm out.